Hey, Nina.
Hey, Kavan.
So good to have you on my show. Such an honor for me to invite you here.
That is so sweet of you. It's an honor for me to be here, Kavan. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I guess first off, I want to tell everyone like why I'm inviting Nina to do this episode. Of course, Nina talks about flower. And so I just love to hear different stories of people growing their audience, building their community, and especially someone not focusing on business topics. I find it fascinating. So after I get to know you, I follow your Instagram. So I keep seeing your content and I just want to learn from you. So that's all.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah, it is a little bit different. So, yeah, it'll be fun to dig in and see what we find. This has been a bit of a surprise, the whole adventure, the whole journey. So I'm sort of learning as I go and just having fun.
Yeah. So before we dive into the journey, I'm sure it's a crazy journey. I want to know more about you because I don't think we have had like a video one-on-one interaction. We saw each other on live calls, like group calls, and we exchanged a ton of emails. But what should the people watching this know about you? Like, what do you care about? What's your value in life? That kind of thing.
First and foremost, I'm a mom. I have 3 kids. I've got a stepdaughter who's about to turn 30, who's been in my life since she was 5. And I have 2 teenagers, a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old. So yeah, they are my world. Of course, I'm a wife, and yeah, family's everything to me. I know it's so important to you too. And let's see, what else? I'm a teacher by training. So, in a former life, I was a kindergarten teacher and an environmental educator. So, I've always been fascinated by the natural world, and it just brings me such joy to be out in it. And so, I think a large part of what's happened is just my interest in sharing that with people. So, yeah, teacher by training. And
How long
what
has
do
that
I
been?
value most? I think one of my guiding principles is kindness. I just feel really strongly about kindness.
Now I know we why we click so well. It's
Yeah,
because we're both family oriented. Like we're both just friendly and kind people, right? We're here to build a business, but we want to do it in the genuine way. That's why I love talking to
absolutely.
you, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And you were a
Yeah.
teacher too, yes?
I wouldn't say
You,
so. I'm not a
no,
professional teacher. I mean, I
but
used to
you taught kids coding, yes?
well, I was the one running everything next to the founder, but I actually never taught one class there.
Oh, that surprises me because you are such a natural teacher to me. So, yeah, I figured that was another point of connection.
Something I worked really hard in the last few years to level up. But yeah, thank you for that. So how long were you a teacher for?
Being a teacher was almost like a second career for me. I got my teaching degree when I was 26 years old, which is a little late.
Oh,
And then I
didn't know
taught
that.
for several years. My husband and I ended up moving here to Asheville, where I live now, Asheville, North Carolina. So at that point, I left the classroom and dove into environmental education for several years. Then, when I had my children, I left all of that and was a mom. I went
Mm.
back to teaching for several years. And then finally in 2019, I decided it was time to leave teaching altogether. That's when I sort of launched into doing what I always really wanted to do, which was to create art and be an artist. So that was sort of the impetus for this whole adventure, really.
Yeah, I see. I scroll down to the bottom of your Instagram page and I saw some prints, some
Yes,
paintings, some
yes,
drawings.
yes.
So that means you started with drawing and then somehow you started talking about wild flowers. Is that right?
Yes.
What happened? I'm
Happened.
super curious. What happened?
Well, it's interesting. It's been a journey, but I started out, I got on Instagram because Instagram is such a visual platform and such a powerful place for artists, right? So I got on to showcase some of the work that I was doing. I've always been interested in plants and foraging. And my dad was a forager and he would take us out. He loved mushrooms and, we would collect mushrooms, was really always interested in that and interested in plants in general. So my art, I knew I wanted to hone in on botanicals. And that was just sort of my passion. I'm fascinated by plants. So got on Instagram, started to showcase some of my work, but I was also really interested in the stories behind the plants and sort of our
Mm.
connection to them through folklore and just how they've been used in the past. Because I feel like sort of in today's world, plants are sort of like background material, right? I mean, they
Hmm.
just don't really,
Yeah.
they're decorative in most cases, or but in the past, we really depended on them for everything. And so we had a very, very close relationship to plants. So there's all this incredible lore around them and what they were used for medicinally, or how ancient people viewed them as being almost like to be revered and to be respected. I just thought that was so interesting. And I felt like that was something that I wanted to highlight, because whenever I created a print, I always had the story to go along with it. So if you purchased my art, you always got the story of the plant, but it was on the back, right? I kind of thought, well, I'll put that in the front and tell the story,
Oh,
and
so it was written on the back
written on the
in
back,
text.
right? And
Oh, I
so
see.
let's get the story out there, and that's where it started, and people really loved that. So I gave them more and more of that. The art began to take sort of a back seat. I just kept creating the videos and had a couple viral videos, and that's here we are. So
It's amazing because when you were talking about the prints, I actually check it out. You have a transformation of your Instagram account in the first 10 photos, they were just prints, like
just prints.
static. You just look at it. But then when you talked about you're focusing more on the storytelling, and then I started seeing the videos of you actually drawing, like the process of drawing. So I'm like, oh, that's different. And then recently I saw you posting a video of, I think you were volunteering at a school, helping them with their garden. So I see a ton of variety on your channel. It tells us how important it is to not just show the finished product, like something I always talk about. Don't just show the end product. This is fascinating.
Yeah, the process so important. The medium that I was using early on, it's called cyanotype, and it's a kind of photography. It's like a cameraless photography. The process itself is not particularly beautiful. So on Instagram, it was about that time when Reels started to be the dominant form on Instagram.
Right.
So prior to Reels, it was all still photography, right?
True.
Again, very, very good for artists, very visual. So they were like, no, 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 it's Reels now. And I thought, oh, God, like, what am I going to do with that? Because I am a complete introvert. As you notice, like I'm showing the finished product. I don't want to put my face out there. I don't want to say anything. The process I'm using is not very attractive. And there were all these artists doing these beautiful things. That was a big part of let's get into the stories here and see if that is another angle on what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. It was a big hurdle for me to cross.
Hmm.
Not easy for me to do. I guess that's one takeaway, is that I was always the shyest kid in the class. The teachers, when they would do the school play, they would give me the parts that had no talking parts. So it's just so interesting. I just encourage people to try, because if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah. And I feel like, to be honest, I am introverted as well. People who got on my group calls, they might not think so, but I just feel like the internet is kind of made for people like us. We have a lot to share, but we have certain personality, and this format of sharing is very nice. To me, it's very suitable.
Well,
So
no,
to be honest, so many people I met online are introverts.
that's so interesting. I think you're exactly right. What I sort of had this epiphany, which was that when I'm out there creating the video, like it's just me and I'm just
Yeah.
talking to myself, which I do a lot of anyway. So it wasn't as scary once I started doing it as I thought it was going to be. Once I flipped that around and I wasn't the audience watching, I was the creator creating, it just wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, and I think it's less scary when people give you reaction. When you start to
That's,
get those validation, like, oh, people actually love your work,
yeah.
then you're just gonna keep working on it and enjoy the process. That being said, so you said you kind of see the trend of reels and then you wanted to start doing storytelling videos. That's really brave, by the way. I can only do text 3 years ago when I started. So that must have started as an experiment. You had nothing to expect. So when did things started to go viral? Like people started coming to you. Is it after
Yeah,
five
it was,
videos, 10 or 15?
no, it was a couple of months of it.
Oh, wow.
Um, I had a viral video. Then it was kind of shocking because I can remember having 800 followers and
Right.
seeing all of these artists out there who had, 2,000 and just thinking, how will that ever happen for me? So once the video started to go viral, it was shocking. And I really didn't quite know what to make of it. So it happened fairly quickly within a couple of months, and it happened at different points over the course of basically a year. I was getting a lot of feedback from people and just trying to interpret what it was that was so interesting
I
or
do that.
intriguing for people. The stories were fascinating to me, so I felt like that was a huge part of it. But, people would talk about, oh, your voice is so soothing. It was
Oh,
interesting to sort of get these different information back from the community about what it was that they really liked and just kind of factor that in and, try to create more things that people really liked.
so what would be your hypothesis for the growth to come? Like for me, like one thing I can think of is how raw your videos are. Usually we see a lot of like quick cuts, jumping
Uh-huh.
around, fancy stuff, but you are just there talking and in the wild. And then you're very knowledgeable about the topic for sure. So it's very raw, very authentic. And I think more and more we enjoy this type of content. That would be my hypothesis, but I want to hear like what do you think contribute to that crazy growth?
Well, I mean, you hear it over and over and over again, the authentic or the authenticity piece. I really, really feel like people are craving that, especially now, in the world of AI. And of course, we've all been, we're kind of coming out of this whole pandemic, but that was a real shock to the system, and people are still trying to figure that out and adjust. And so, we were isolated. I think the authenticity was huge. I think also, here's another thing I think, well, storytelling, huge,
Yeah.
huge, right? I mean, we are a storytelling species. It is why we are as successful as we are as a species. A lot of people think, oh, it's because we make tools or we're really, I mean, there are scientists out there who say it's about stories. That's the thing. So it's how we relate to one another, it's how we relate to the world. So stories are huge. I also think that the stories I'm telling are sort of ways to connect to the natural world. So much information and so much of what we hear out there right now about the natural world is full of fear and hopelessness. There are fires, there are volcanoes, all the natural
Mm,
disasters, the global
yeah.
warming, all of that. And so there's this, I think people are holding so much grief around the natural world. What I'm offering is something that it's a way to kind of circumvent that and
Yeah.
connect without the grief and the horror of like thinking about the world coming to an end, right? I don't know. That's the
Yeah.
only thing I can come up
Something
with is
beautiful in our chaotic world, something like that.
my husband says, well, it's the kindergarten teacher in you. It's like, pull up your carpet square. Here's a story. It's like you're offering people a little moment of respite
Mm,
from just the chaos that we're kind of having to deal with. So that may be
mm.
part of it too. I don't know, but
I think so. And you're such a lovable person.
no,
So
that's very sweet.
it's easy to like you when you
That's very
laugh, when
kind.
you're kind, we can tell. So
That's very sweet. Thank you, Kavan.
when people start to come in, right? I love to talk about like how we always engage the audience so that we're building like stronger friendship and fanship,
Yeah.
not just like treating them as like, oh, people watch my content and then they can buy our stuff. So I'm wondering, because you get a ton of likes and replies, crazy. So how do you actually develop those like tiny relationships one-on-one?
Well, you know what? Those tiny relationships I think are key. I really do. As you can tell, was really a surprise for me, right? I feel like I kind of walked in the room backwards and, I've kind of been trying to figure out what in the world's going on. So I didn't have a product to sell. I mean, I had my art, but that wasn't why I was doing it so much. It was more just, it was a passion of mine, really. I mean, it's obviously connected to the art, but it wasn't like, okay, here's the story about this print. Now buy this. It wasn't about that. But what I found through this whole process is just this fabulous group of people who gathered around. And I made a point of responding to every single person who said something.
Reply
Or the
or
little,
private,
what's that?
every reply, public reply,
Yes.
or
Yes.
wow.
Yes.
I mean, I
Yes,
do
I
the
did.
same, but your volume is crazy.
Yeah. No, it was very important to me because I felt if somebody is taking the time to stop the death scroll and make a comment, like that is such an honor, right? For me. And what I started to see the regulars, and we would have little exchanges and so these little mini friendships did sort of bubble up from that. It was really wonderful. And I love that aspect of it. So, yes, for me, it was very important to respond to everybody. And, even with just if somebody put a heart, I would put a heart back. Cause I mean, it takes like a microsecond to do that, to affirm what they're saying. And also, I had the experience of putting comments on people's Instagram and like not getting a response. That felt a little like, I was like, so I
Yeah,
just, that was important to me.
I get it. It's like basic respect. Like if
Yeah.
you can't even do that, then why would people stick around and keep commenting? Why do they need to do that? No reason. When you're speaking about you're sharing all this because you love it, it reminds me of why I talk about this concept called building in public. It's because I just live this life principles like honesty, transparency, helpfulness. It's just who I am. So like I can talk about it all day for 2, 3 decades and I'll still be okay. I guess that's what people need when they want to get out there, build an audience. You cannot just do it for the money. Something has to connect down here. So you keep going every day.
I agree with that. And I think also the build in public model kind of fits with people who are trying to do that. It's just a natural part. You want to be connected to people. I remember when I had some brick and mortar places here in town where I was selling my art. And, I would get a check at the end of the month for however many I sold. And I thought, but like, who bought it? I want to know. Why did because it's a part of you and you're putting it out there in the world. And yeah, you want that connection, or at
Mm.
least I did. It wasn't just about getting that check at the end of the month. Like that, I mean, that was great, but I wanted more. And so I think, yes, the build in public model offers that connection for those of us who are looking for it.
Yeah, you must be loving what you do now because you know exactly who is buying. You can email them and have a little chat. That feels
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, it does. It really does. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
They appreciate it too. Like I feel
Mm.
like the people who are connected, they're craving that as well. Otherwise, they wouldn't be commenting or trying to reach out and connect. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I spend so much time replying to every email. Like I always say I reply to 100%. Sometimes I'm 2 weeks late, but I still reply because I really enjoy whether you're my customer or not, I just really enjoy it. So speaking of like talking to these people in your audience or in your customer base, like I often like share how you can co-create with your audience as well. It's not just you thinking like, oh, I want to build this product. I think they will like it. I look at this build in public framework as like You're just getting feedback. You're just understanding what the people around you need, and then you involve them in the process. So I want to kind of tap into that part of your journey, because it's not just about creating product. Like, for example, you're starting Substack. I wonder, did you kind of get the audience involved in that process, in the decision making, to kind of gauge, do they read emails? Should I start a Substack? Are they going to read my emails? Did you do something to involve them?
No, but so here's what happened and why I went to Substack.
Okay.
When I hit 100,000 followers, that seems to be sort of the mark at which, like, you start getting people reaching out to you. I had editors reach out about books. I had, companies reaching out about selling their products. So suddenly I had all of this happening, and I had to make a decision about what direction I was going to go. And I spoke with several companies who, were wanting me to highlight their products. Excellent, amazing companies. B Corps, like the kind of companies I would want to be like representing. However, I kind of got to this place where I thought, that's really not the direction I want to go. I don't want to be an influencer, with a capital I. Like, I don't want to necessarily cross that line. I see people do it all the time. It's totally legit, but it just didn't align for me in terms of where I wanted to go with this.
You mean products
Right.
for the brands and pick up the sponsorship dollar?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. It became clear I would be creating content for these companies with their approval and all of that. And it just, like, that wasn't what I'd been doing. It wasn't really what I wanted to do. However, I was working my tail off doing all of this. And I thought, I need to figure out a way to get paid for this, because I'm not going to be able to sustain it. It's getting to the burnout stage. And so I found out about Substack, and I thought, well, now that would be a way for me to, number one, get deeper with the content, right? So instead of just this like 1 minute and 30-second clip, I can talk more. I mean, I'm usually leaving out like tons and tons of stuff, I can get deeper. I can continue to create video. I can deliver it straight to people's inboxes. And if people are interested in supporting me on a subscription model, this would be a way to do that, or, supporting what I'm doing. That's why I decided to do it. I didn't get feedback from people about it. And that may have been a mistake because there were a lot of people that were like, what? Like, what even is Substack?
Maybe even talk about the process openly, right? Something like that.
Yeah. Why are you leaving us? So I was like, I'm still here. I'm still going to be putting content out. But if you'd like to make sure you get it and you'd like to get more of it, check this out. See what you think. If you don't like it, you can unsubscribe. No big deal. There were some people that didn't like that, but I now have over 5,000 people following me over there. So it's okay. It worked out okay.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I learned for sure is that you cannot get everyone to love
you
and everything you do. No way.
Right. Yeah. The conversion is not 100%. And that's okay. That's really okay. Some people come over and unsubscribe. Cool. That's fine too. Early on, I will say this, just as an example of something that did happen in terms of feedback from the audience. I was using a phrase at the end of my videos, which was, don't be a weed, be a wildflower. And there were lots of people who said, I want the t-shirt, and I was like, oh, okay. All right. So I created a t-shirt with one of my images on it, and it sold out. So
wow.
That's an example of, like, it wasn't anything I had thought of. I would never have dreamed that up. But people were like, yeah, I want a t-shirt. So I was like, okay. So, that was I would say a little mini experiment in a sort of build in public kind of model. It wasn't expected. I didn't set out to do it, but I have the experience now of how powerful that can be. Right. So,
yeah, I feel like even though it sounds like you don't have like a structured way to approach this, but I'm pretty sure all those like conversations, mini touch point that you have with your audience, you're already doing it. We just don't know, but you're definitely hearing a lot from them, just like this. I want your t-shirt. By the way, there's one more thing I want to point out. You said you need to find a way to make money, right? You were talking about making money to make this, worth it. I feel like a lot of people, when they see us like, oh, doing free stuff, growing an audience, and then suddenly turning to monetization, they feel they don't like it.
Yeah.
But I just want to point out that this is hard work. Creating content for free, talking to everyone in replies, that's hard work. It takes us hours every day. So we have to make it worth it, and we have to sustain our family and life as well. So yeah, I just want to point that out.
No, well, thank you. I appreciate that validation in that regard. I do think that for better for worse, these social platforms have trained people to get all this stuff for free, and there is sort of this belief that if you have 100,000 followers, you're getting paid by Instagram to make this content, and that's simply
Oh
not the
yeah.
case. Instagram has got this great thing figured out where they've got millions of people out there creating all this content for free, and they're just raking in the advertising dollars. It is sort of like people are trained in a certain way about that. Fortunately, I think I had created enough relationships and people knew that I'm like a sincere person and I'm not trying to, pull something over on them or whatever. I think people were like, "Oh, I've really enjoyed what you've been doing and I know it's hard work, so I would love to support you in that sense." And so, yeah, I just got my bestseller check mark on Substack. It's going really well considering I've only been there for a few months. So, yeah.
I am not very familiar with Substack. So what is the bestseller badge or mark?
It means you have hundreds of paid subscribers. You get these little check marks at certain
Oh.
junctures. It's been surprising in that regard. I didn't expect it. Growth on Substack is not easy. It's not easy. Social media, so easy to follow people, so low commitment, but for people to actually follow you over to another platform and give you their access to their private email account, totally different ballgame. That's something that I've been learning about and understanding better. And also, when you post on Substack, I get quite a few responses, but I don't get the responses like I get over at Instagram, right? So, in terms of feedback, and so there's also a little bit of like, oh boy, I'm not hearing as much. Like, am I doing okay? Are they liking that? That type thing. It's an adjustment for me, but I really do appreciate the fact that people are saying, yeah, here's my email. Let's keep in touch.
Yeah, I was gonna bring us here to this like special section of the show, which I always ask the guests to think about one thing they're experiencing in their journey in regards to like building an audience or community. And then we already got here. So that's great. I mean, this part, I want it to be just free chatting, discussion, bouncing ideas between the two of us. Because more and more, I don't really like the kind of show that is very structured Q&A. Free flowing seems really nice. Yeah. So you mentioned it's hard to get engagement. It's hard to build community on Substack, right? Yeah. You can go
Go ahead.
first. No, I just want to say I actually thought about it a little bit because I also use email as well. So Twitter/X is really how people discover me. Then, of course, I have many assets online, but the email is really where I just keep in touch with people. But it's really hard to have those like quick conversations or interaction. Like you are someone who would reply to my email, but 95% of the people wouldn't do it. So I feel like it's just a way to keep in touch, to get directly into their inbox. But there needs to be an extra step to pull us closer again. Are you thinking
point.
about the same thing?
I would love to hear what you have to say about that, but I think it's a really, really important point. It's a different medium. So you're not going to get the same responses. You're not going to get the same amount of, it is a direct connection,
Yeah.
but it's not quite as, I just think people are just trained to, or I shouldn't say trained, but more, it's just the social media is just easy to leave a little
Yeah.
comment. It's a little bit different on the email. And maybe that's because we're just so used to getting emails that are, just, I don't know, like all my
I
bills come in by email, right?
Oh, that's true. It's a mix of everything.
It's
So your mind state is not really at a point where you want to initiate a conversation. Yeah. So
right.
I often think about it this way, like Twitter, so easy to talk to someone. Instagram, so easy to just comment a few words. Not exactly initiating a conversation, but at least say something. But email is just mostly for consumption and then move on. I think about every channel has its own purpose.
Mm.
Like Instagram is for exposure. You need it because it can give you that referral. Email is to keep in touch, but since it's just to keep in touch, it lacks the interaction. So I was thinking when you present this to me, I was thinking I do like boot camps, open house. You were at my open house event, workshops, these type of things just to pull people closer to me again and invite them in, but they still get the invitation through emails. But all they need to do is say, I'm coming. That's it. They don't need to like write me a long email or something. And then another way I think about is in my framework, I call it strategic invitation. This might seem a little abstract, but for example, I was writing my book. I don't know if people can see, but my book is here. And I need people to give me feedback. So I keep an email list just for the book. So if people click a link in my emails, I would track like, oh, this person is interested. So I keep a separate list for the book. And then when I'm ready, I would just send to that sub list and say, my book is ready. I would love to have 10 beta readers for the next 2 weeks. Who is free? So again, I'm pulling them closer by inviting them in. And this time it's not for events. This time is to shape the book. And they get a free book. I get feedback. So kind of win-win. So I thought maybe you can do the same.
I
Just need
love
that
that.
strategic invitation step.
I love that. Absolutely. Yes, that's brilliant. I mean, one of the things that as I was considering the Substack platform, because it's sort of a, self-publishing kind of format, it felt like a good fit in terms of a build in public kind of model. From that perspective, I turned away from editors and thought I'm going to, number one, get comfortable with sort of writing process, but also see what I can do around this in terms of a build in public model. There are lots of people over there that are just putting out their books in sort of a serial fashion. But this, what you're suggesting, is a nice sort of special addition to that, where I feel like it would pull people in, allow for that connection, but also, yeah, get some valuable feedback. I mean, if there's one thing I learned from my accidental build in public experience, it's that people have a lot of really great ideas that I would never have thought of. That just feels really, really interesting to me. A great idea. I will definitely try to figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
But even
And
just workshops, like you said, or
mm,
ways to connect live, I think is pretty powerful.
yeah, you can introduce some flowers. They can ask some questions. So they would feel like this is something they cannot get usually just by
Mhm.
watching content. That really talking to Nina, like me right now, they will have the same amount of fun.
Well, it has been interesting, the sort of experience of, people will stop me at the airport, right? And they'll be
Uh-huh.
like, "Are you the Blue Ridge Botanic lady?" I'm like,
Really?
"Oh my gosh. Yes, I am the Blue Ridge
Wow.
Botanic lady." And then they'll be like, "Oh, I'm a little starstruck." I'm like, "Really? Like, it's
Whoa.
just me, just a mom."
You're like Mr. Beast.
Oh, yeah, sure. Be
How
coming
does
out
that
with
make you feel,
chocolate
by the
bars.
way?
No, no, no. That has been just really shocking. It's an interesting kind of thing to try to figure out, and I think what you're suggesting is really a way to kind of like I'm very uncomfortable with that barrier. Like I said, I'm just a mom. That feels like a really nice way to just be approachable and connect in a human way,
Mm.
off of this sort of like platform of Instagram as some sort of, I don't know, celebrity status is just not quite, yeah.
Yeah. Once you get on live calls, it's so different. Like, it seems like that social media way of interaction disappear and we're just humans.
We're
Of
just
course,
human. Exactly. Right.
it depends on how you facilitate and how you run it. But from my experience, I feel like I'm just meeting a bunch of friends and teaching them something and hearing
Right.
from them. So it's definitely not easy. I will tell you, 3 years ago, so I wasn't a teacher at the kids coding school, right? So 3 years ago when I started teaching online, I was so afraid. I kept asking the audience, like, what do you think of this session? Do you have any feedback for me? And they can sense my insecurity. They can sense my incompetence. And one friend, online friend, stayed behind. And she told me, Kavan, your writing, top notch, high authority. Tonight, you lose a lot of it. And that was my prompt to just improve and do more live calls. So I understand how uncomfortable that can be, but you get better.
Yeah.
And people
Yeah.
would love to hang out with you and learn something that way.
Well, it would be mutual too, because one of the fun things has been hearing other people's stories. That's been one of my greatest joys, is that people will share these special little stories about their loved one and a particular flower. So beautiful, so touching, and I love that. I would love to hear more of their stories as
Yeah,
opposed to me just talking
totally.
all the time, right?
Very mutual. Where are you at, by the way? 113,000 followers. There must be like a 500 or thousands hardcore fans. If you just get to know these people, I don't know. I would feel pretty good about my life and my business. Yeah.
Like I said, it's been a surprise. So it's not like I set out to like and hacked this and did that and did all the little things. It has happened. And I'm very grateful because it has enriched my life so much to know these people and to share my love of the outdoors. So, but yeah, one of the things that I do feel like is really important, and if people are interested in sort of like exploring social media platforms, is just like that you like dive into what you're really passionate about. That has been a takeaway for me. I mean, every single person who gets on there is going to be unique, but yeah, I think the authenticity and just the passion for things, sharing those passions, that's really key.
Yeah, I love it. Such a good way to wrap up this episode. Like, don't find that niche, don't find that topic, but really just look inside of you. You're already doing it. You just need to identify it. Such a good lesson.
Yeah,
All right.
that's certainly been my experience, and it's a lot more fun that way, I think.
I think so. Yeah. Well, Nina, I cannot say how much I appreciate this call with you. I
Thank
learned
you.
so much about your journey, fascinating. And what I love the most is you hold your standard when you run this thing. Like, if you don't like to do something, you say, no, I really love that because I'm doing the same. Yeah. It's hard, but hard to say no to money, but that's the right thing to do.
That's the right thing to do. Oh, well, come on. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Love all that you're doing. And, when I found you, gosh, I guess it was like maybe 2 years ago. I guess it was about 2 years
Yeah.
ago. I
Yeah.
heard you on a podcast and I
Really.
thought, that guy, he is so real and so kind and trustworthy. And like, that's the kind of person that I would like to get to know, but also just get advice from, because I'm kind of standing here thinking, what should I do here? That's the kind of person I would like to connect with. So yeah,
Back.
it's wonderful to watch you, and I look forward to being a part of the community as well.
Yay. Thank you, Nina.